ladies and gentlemen. I am Joseph Taufik. Today, I'll be talking, or my topic for this paper was actually about foreign direct investment and its impact on growth. Specifically, in this paper, I will discuss its impact on the growth of the American economy. My co-author and I, the reason that we actually picked this topic is that because this research was actually conducted in Egypt. It was during when it was that time when Egypt was going through a revolution, and then everyone was actually very interested in what's going to happen to foreign investments and whether that's going to affect the Egyptian economy or not. Many people are actually worried that now foreign investments will not enter Egypt, or many foreign investments will actually exit, causing the Egyptian economy to collapse, basically. But then the reason we picked the United States is that many literature suggested that in developing countries, foreign direct investments may actually have a negative effect on the growth of the economy. Therefore, it was actually of importance that we found a country with sufficient or local conditions that were appropriate for foreign direct investment to have positive growth, and to measure the full impact on the growth of the economy as a result of foreign direct investment. So that led us to basically pick out variables from growth theories. We have two growth theories: exogenous growth theory and endogenous growth theory. Exogenous growth theory, presented by Robert Solow, really emphasizes the importance of labor and capital towards the production function and the production. So in order to incorporate both variables, we actually chose labor and FDI as a proxy for capital to kind of evaluate this whole concept. Also, endogenous growth theory, expressed by Paul Romer, really emphasizes the importance of human capital, research and development, and education spending on the growth in the economy. Therefore, education spending in the tertiary level was actually chosen as a variable incorporated in this model. And then what happened was that we chose GDP from a period of 1980 to 2008 to truly measure out that effect. Our research questions were really specific, but with one that truly stands out, and one that was really of true importance to us. The first one is actually, what is the impact of FDI on the American GDP? Second one, what is the impact of FDI on the American labor force? And what is the impact of FDI on education spending? And last, does FDI Granger cause GDP, or does GDP Granger cause FDI? The reason this question is actually of essence is that in the case of Egypt, many people were actually wondering, so if FDI exits, would that mean that the Egyptian economy will collapse? Or is it that GDP and its growth is what causes FDI to actually enter a country? So in order for us to truly find out that question, it was due to data availability, the quality of data was of importance. That's why the United States was actually picked. But again, so it's such a question. So now countries would have to truly focus on FDI, or should they focus on local conditions in order for these local conditions to attract FDI into that country? So it was a matter of policy and policy recommendations for these countries. The methods used were actually VAR analysis, vector autoregressive. What that does is that it basically gave us 4 equations, taking each variable of the variables that we chose, which are basically GDP, education spending on the tertiary level, labor force, and FDI. Each taking them as a dependent variable and seeing the effects of the other 3 variables on them as independent variables. I don't want to really get into a lot of technical analysis here, and then Granger causality was actually taken afterwards, after finding that all the variables are co-integrated and all. So Granger causality was of use in this portion of the research. And these are the data collected. And as I mentioned, this was from the area or time period from 1980 till 2008. They were obtained from the World Bank database and government spending database. All right, results. Results were expected, thankfully. It agreed with some literature and disagreed with some literature. But of course, this agreement and disagreement varied from countries, from whether they were OECD countries or whether they were developing countries. The results were basically that there's a positive relationship between FDI and GDP, and a unidirectional Granger causality flowing from GDP growth to FDI, answering our fourth question, that GDP is truly what causes FDI and not vice versa. Because if it was vice versa, then any country could just make lower taxes, have everything ready for GDP to actually, for FDI to actually flow in, and they will grow. But that's not the case. Countries must focus on their local conditions, must truly develop their financial institutions, academic institutions, their infrastructure, in order to attract such FDI or foreign direct investments to actually flow into the host country. Another research in the literature reviewed suggested that it took the U.S. as a whole and then conducted a panel data on the 50 states. It found out that states with better local conditions, if you will, with better enhanced infrastructure, with better education levels, more spending in education, attracted more FDI. Also, crime rates, taxes, or actually state taxes, influenced FDI into these specific states. So that was of essence here. Then, we also found a positive relationship between FDI and the labor force. So, if local conditions are actually sufficient and perfect for FDI to come in, what's going to happen is that once these foreign investments come in, they will enhance the labor force of the host country. Thus, because they will spend to really train the labor force, to educate them, so on and so forth. The other relationship was between FDI and education spending. Through education spending and training, foreign investments thrive. So I cannot bring in, or as a multinational company going into another host country, I cannot go to the country and not train them and not educate them on how to use my technical standards or the technology that I am bringing in. Therefore, this enhanced the know-how of the locals of the host country. In many instances, the reason that FDI sometimes causes negative relationships with GDP growth is due to competitiveness. Sometimes when FDI enters a host country, it hinders competitiveness in that country, thus causing less production that cannot be compensated by the production by the foreign entity, if you will. Before, it was truly interesting to actually notice how when local conditions were sufficient, FDI will actually be of huge benefit, versus if local conditions were not sufficient, it will cause a vicious cycle for developing countries. The conclusions were basically importance of labor and education on FDI, and vice versa. FDI also was of crucial importance to labor and education because it enhanced these variables. Again, local conditions, it cannot be stressed enough. Financial institutions, academic institutions, education is key. Therefore, some of the policy recommendations for the Arab countries that went through the Arab Spring was basically to enhance your financial institutions and your academic institutions. Because without education, there is nowhere to go. These countries may not or will not grow without education. And these countries will not grow without proper infrastructure. These countries will not grow without proper tax codes. Laws and regulations must be governed properly for these countries to attract sufficient FDI or sufficient investments rather, whether domestic or foreign investments for them to actually grow and thrive. And then, suggested further research, because this research paper actually caused many more questions than it answered, if you will. So basically, what variables Granger calls GDP? Because if we know that, we can focus on these variables. If we truly find what variables would cause GDP to actually grow, we would focus on them. And then, would FDI in all sectors yield positive growth, or some sectors may yield negative growth? Maybe we were fortunate in the case of the U.S. that it was found to be positive. But maybe if we pick another OECD country, it may be negative due to the sector-wise. Maybe they're focusing on the wrong sector, and this sector is hindering competitiveness, thus causing negative relationship between foreign direct investment and GDP. And then a panel data of FDI in specific industries to truly pinpoint what industries and how FDI would cause GDP to actually grow. And then comparison between the domestic investment and foreign direct investment to measure the impact of both on each country, if you will. Because if a country has sufficient wealth but does not encourage that wealth to be invested within, so why should they seek foreign investments? Shouldn't they, first of all, enhance the local conditions for domestic investments to actually take place, and thus this will attract foreign investments to actually flow into that country? And then, is there a threshold for FDI inflows in order to have positive relationship with GDP? Because I mean, if we don't meet that threshold, would that mean that FDI would be negative or not? So that was of key importance. And that's it. Any questions for me? You want to keep them till the end, or? The end? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Let's have a real nice hand for this one.